Amir had always been the kind of person who blended quietly into the background. He showed up early to work every morning, carrying a simple lunchbox and greeting everyone with a soft smile. He wasn't loud, he didn't gossip, and he never tried to be the center of attention. Most people in the office didn't know much about him except that he was polite, dependable, and calm, even on the busiest days. The company he worked for was always busy, handling thousands of delivery requests every week. Inside the building, phones rang constantly, printers hummed nonstop, and employees hurried from one place to another. In the middle of that chaos, Amir sat at his desk, quietly doing his work with full focus. He didn't talk much, but he understood his job better than most people realized. His boss, however, didn't seem to notice or appreciate that. Mr. Kareem was the kind of person who liked loud voices, bold personalities, and dramatic moments. He believed a good leader had to show authority in front of everyone. And sometimes showing authority meant pointing fingers, raising his voice, or making small issues look big. If something went wrong, he needed someone to blame. If the office was stressed, he felt the need to prove he was in control. And if he saw someone quiet, he assumed they were weak or uninterested. That morning started like every other morning. Employees gathered in the meeting room with cups of hot tea and half-sleepy eyes, preparing for the weekly briefing. The chairs scraped lightly against the floor, people whispered to one another, and a few joked about how long the meeting would probably be. Amir sat near the corner, not hiding, but simply choosing a place where he felt comfortable. He placed his notebook on the table and waited. Mr. Kareem entered with his usual brisk steps. He liked to walk fast, talk fast, and react fast. He stood at the front of the room, cleared his throat loudly, and began the meeting with a tone that made everyone sit straighter than before. He talked about targets, new clients, and expectations for the upcoming month. His voice filled the room like a loudspeaker, bouncing off the walls and making everyone pay attention whether they wanted to or not. At first, the meeting felt normal. People nodded, wrote notes, and avoided eye contact whenever the boss asked a question. Then suddenly, the topic shifted. Mr. Kareem pulled out a printed report and waved it in the air as if it were proof of a crime. "This," he said, tapping the paper dramatically, "is what I found this morning. A mistake in the order entries. One wrong number, one wrong detail, and the whole process gets delayed. Do you know how this makes us look?" The room stayed completely silent. Amir's eyes lowered to his notebook. He already knew what was coming. The mistake was small, barely noticeable, and he had already submitted a corrected version earlier that morning. It was the kind of error that happened in every company, an easy fix, something that didn't cause real harm. But for reasons Amir didn't understand, his boss always reacted strongly toward him. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one wanted to be the target of the next sentence. Mr. Kareem scanned the room slowly, dramatically, as if choosing the next person to point at. Then his gaze stopped. "Amir," he said loudly, "this is your entry, isn't it?" Some heads turned. Some employees looked at Amir with sympathy, others with curiosity. No one liked being singled out in front of everyone. But Amir lifted his eyes calmly, not defensive, not afraid, just softly aware of the moment. "Yes, sir," he said quietly, "but I corrected it first thing in the morning." The updated file, Mr. Kareem cut him off before he could finish. He raised his voice even more now, louder than necessary, as if he wanted the entire building to hear. "That's not the point." The room tensed. A few people exchanged glances. They knew the routine. Whenever the boss started a sentence like that, the scolding would continue for a while. The point, he continued, tapping the report again, "is that mistakes like this show carelessness, and carelessness slows down the entire department." Turned to the rest of the team. "You all need to understand something. When someone doesn't give full attention, we all pay the price." Some people nodded automatically, not because they agreed, but because they didn't want trouble. Others stared at their notebooks, pretending to write something important. Amir didn't respond. He kept his posture straight, his face calm. He didn't shrink back or look ashamed. He simply waited for the moment to pass. But his quietness seemed to irritate the boss even more. "Are you even listening?" Mr. Karim asked sharply. Yes, sir, Amir replied. You just what? The boss snapped. You just thought it was fine to do your own thing? You thought a mistake like this was no big issue? Amir took a slow breath. He wasn't angry. He was simply trying to understand why such a small issue was becoming such a dramatic scene. He didn't like arguing, especially in front of others, so he kept his tone respectful. I only meant that I fixed it right away, he said. It didn't cause any delay. But the boss didn't want explanations. He wanted a moment of power. He wanted to show he was in control. And in his mind, raising his voice meant leadership. From now on, Mr. Karim said loudly, I want you to double-check everything you submit. If you're having trouble keeping up, you should let someone know. We don't want slow people on this team. Few people shifted uncomfortably again. The word slow was unnecessary. Everyone felt that. It wasn't guidance. It was public humiliation. But no one dared say anything. The air in the room felt heavier now, filled with tension that made it hard to breathe. Amir nodded gently. It's not because he accepted the insult, but because he didn't want the situation to escalate. Understood, he said, voice steady, calm. Most people expected him to look embarrassed or upset, but something about his calmness made the room even quieter. His silence wasn't weakness. It was controlled, thoughtful, almost dignified. And that dignity unsettled even the boss, who had expected a more dramatic reaction. For a long moment, Mr. Karim simply stared at him, perhaps confused about why Amir wasn't breaking down or arguing. Then he shook his head as if brushing off the feeling and went back to talking about other tasks. But the mood in the room had changed completely. Employees were no longer listening to the meeting. They were thinking about what had just happened. Some felt bad for Amir. Others felt uncomfortable with how unnecessary the scolding had been. A few even wondered if the boss's behavior would ever be questioned by someone higher up. When the meeting finally ended, chairs scraped back again, but this time with a heavier sound. People stood and walked out slowly, whispering quietly so the boss wouldn't hear them. Amir gathered his notebook and stood up as well. Someone nearby whispered, "Sorry you had to deal with that." Amir gave a small smile, the kind that didn't show pain but also didn't hide truth. "It's fine," he said softly. But even if he acted unaffected, the moment lingered in the air around him. People looked at him with new eyes, not because of the mistake, but because of the way he handled himself. Quiet strength had a way of surprising people. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and opened his computer. He didn't waste time replaying the moment or imagining what he should have said. Instead, he focused on his work again, his fingers moving steadily over the keyboard. But deep inside, a small shift had begun. He realized something. It wasn't the mistake that bothered his boss. It was something else, something personal, something about his quiet nature that the boss misunderstood. Amir wasn't weak. He wasn't slow. He simply believed in giving his best without shouting about it. He believed respect didn't need volume, and he believed work should speak louder than words. But not everyone saw it that way. As he worked, few colleagues walked past his desk, giving him small looks of sympathy or encouragement. One person even paused and said, "If you ever need support, let me know." Amir nodded politely, though he didn't feel the need to ask anyone for help. He had always handled things on his own. Still, their small gestures warmed him from the inside. It reminded him that the entire world wasn't like his boss. Some people noticed effort, even if it wasn't loud or flashy. As the hours passed, he continued working with quiet dedication, unaware that the moment from the meeting would become the beginning of something. Unexpected something that would change the way everyone in the office saw him, including the boss who tried to shame him. For now, he simply focused on completing his tasks, unaware that he was moving toward a future no one in that room could have predicted. After the meeting, the office slowly returned to its regular rhythm, but something felt different around Amir's desk. People moved a little more gently when they passed by him. Some gave him small nods of support, and others avoided eye contact. Not because they blamed him, but because they felt awkward about what they had witnessed. Everyone knew the boss went too far, but no one knew what to say or how to say it without risking trouble. Amir didn't let any of that distract him. He opened his laptop and started working with the same steady focus he always had. His hands moved quietly across the keyboard, while his mind replayed the morning only in small pieces. He wasn't angry, he didn't let himself be. He had learned long ago that reacting quickly rarely helped anyone. What mattered was what he chose to do next. He glanced at the small, sticky notes on the edge of his monitor. Each one had a different idea he had been working on for months, tiny improvements for the company's workflow. He had been building something slowly, quietly, and carefully. Something he believed could change the entire system for the better. He didn't tell anyone about it, mostly because he didn't want to give people the wrong impression. He wasn't trying to impress the boss or take anyone's job. He simply wanted to help make everyone's work easier. The quiet around him gave him space to think. Every so often, he clicked between spreadsheets, automated formulas, and lines of code he had created in his free time. To someone else, they might look confusing or boring, but to him, they told a story of better efficiency, fewer errors, and smoother operations. A story he wanted to finish someday. A colleague named Nadim walked by and paused. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Amr looked up and gave a small smile. "Yes, of course. Just working. If you need anything." "You know, after what happened," Nadim said carefully, "you can talk to me." "Thank you," Amir replied. "I appreciate it." Nadim nodded and walked away, still glancing back as if unsure whether Amir truly felt fine. But Amir was used to moments like this. He didn't need pity or comfort. He just needed space to work through things his own way. As the day went on, the office grew busier. Phones rang, machines beeped, and the smell of warm tea drifted from the break area. People slowly forgot the tension from the meeting. But the moment stayed fresh in their minds whenever their eyes wandered toward the boss's office door around lunchtime. Amir left his desk quietly and went to the rooftop area where some employees liked to eat. It was always quieter than the cafeteria. He sat on a simple wooden bench, opened his lunchbox, and ate while looking at the sky. The fresh air helped him think clearly. He took small bites, not in a rush, savoring the peace as he ate. His mind wandered to a problem the company kept facing: mixed-up delivery numbers. It wasn't anyone's fault, really. The system was old, slow, and full of complicated steps. Employees had to double-check everything manually, which made mistakes unavoidable. Amir knew the company needed a new system, something smarter, something that could catch errors before they even happened. And he had been quietly building exactly that. He remembered the first time he started working on it. Months ago. It started as a small idea, automated checker tool. Then it grew into something bigger, a complete operations assistant with tracking, alerts, and error prevention features. He had been testing different parts of it slowly, piece by piece, after office hours and on weekends. No one knew about it, not even his friends outside of work. He didn't hide it out of fear. He just didn't want to reveal it until it was perfect. Until he could stand confidently and say, "This will help us." As he finished his lunch, he closed the lid gently and sat quietly for a moment. The boss's harsh words from the morning still echoed faintly in his mind, not because they hurt him, but because they reminded him of something important. People often misunderstood quiet effort. They mistook silence for weakness. They assumed humility meant a lack of ability. But Amir didn't measure himself by what others thought. He measured himself by what he could build, fix, or improve. He measured himself by his actions. He walked back into the office with new determination, almost invisible to those around him. He felt a small spark inside, a quiet push urging him forward. Throughout the afternoon, he worked on his regular tasks, but every free minute he had, he returned to his project. He adjusted a few lines of code, fixed a calculation error, and improved one of the alert systems that automatically corrected wrong order entries. With each small improvement, his creation became more refined. Hours passed. The office emptied slowly as people packed their bags and headed home. But Amir stayed. He often stayed late, not because anyone forced him to, but because he liked using the peaceful silence of the evening to work on his ideas. The glow from his computer screen reflected softly in his glasses as he continued typing at one point. The cleaning staff walked by. One of them smiled and said, "Still working?" Amir nodded. "Just finishing something. You work more than anyone here," the man said kindly. Amir smiled. "I like doing a good job." The man chuckled lightly. "That is rare these days." When he left, the office became even quieter. Amir leaned back in his chair for a moment, stretching his fingers and thinking. His program was almost ready for final testing. He ran a few simulations and watched the system detect and fix errors instantly. The progress bar moved smoothly across the screen. Everything looked promising, but he still needed to run more tests. A soft knock broke the silence. A colleague named Irfan peeked in. "You're still here?" Amir nodded. "Just wrapping up." "I saw what happened earlier," Irfan said hesitantly. "You handled it well. A lot of people would have lost patience." "There's no point getting angry," Amir replied. "It wouldn't change anything." "That's true," Irfan agreed. "But still." "You didn't deserve it," Amir didn't respond. He simply gave a small, calm smile. Irfan looked around the quiet office. "Well, don't stay too long." "Too much work isn't good for health," Amir nodded again. "I'll leave soon." Once Irfan left, Amir returned to the screen. He clicked through different tabs, reviewing the alerts and automation. Everything worked smoothly. He felt a small warmth inside his chest, the feeling of progress, the feeling of purpose. Sometimes he wondered if the boss would ever understand the work he put in, the long hours, quiet dedication, the effort that no one saw. But he didn't build this system for praise. He built it for the team, for the company, for the countless employees who spent hours fixing avoidable mistakes. He wanted to help. That was enough. As the clock neared late evening, he finally stood, stretched his arms, and shut down his computer. He packed his bag slowly, taking one last look at the office. Rows of empty chairs, silent machines, and soft lights reflected off the polished floor. This place held stress, deadlines, and pressure, but it also held possibilities, ideas, and dreams. Amir walked toward the elevator, thinking of the future. Would he ever get the chance to show his system to the higher management? Would they listen? Would they care? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for sure. He would keep trying. The next morning, he arrived early again, just like every day. The sun barely touched the building when he entered the office. He made himself a cup of tea, sat down, and continued testing his system. With every passing minute, he improved it further. By afternoon, he had finished the first full trial of his automated checker. He tested real numbers, fake numbers, common mistakes, rare mistakes, everything he could think of. And each time, the system responded perfectly, correcting errors and displaying alerts in a clean, simple layout. He leaned back and breathed out softly. It was almost ready. Meanwhile, the atmosphere around the office began changing in small ways. People who hadn't spoken to him before started approaching him. They asked simple questions like, "How are you today?" or "Need any help?" Some even apologized indirectly for not speaking up during the meeting. Amir never held anything against them. He understood why they stayed quiet. They didn't want trouble. Not everyone had the courage to challenge authority, especially in a corporate environment. So he always responded kindly. Later that afternoon, a new problem hit the office system: delays. Files weren't loading. Orders weren't updating. The old software kept showing error messages. Everyone groaned in frustration. "The system is getting worse every day," one employee complained. "I wish we had something easier," another added. Amir listened quietly. His fingers paused on the keyboard. His heart beat a little faster. He knew he had something better, something that could solve all these issues. But he also knew he couldn't reveal it yet. Not until he was ready. Not until it was perfect. So he waited. He waited for the right moment. The moment when the company truly needed something new. The moment when the only answer would be the thing he had quietly built with dedication and patience. That moment was coming sooner than anyone expected. And even though Amir didn't know it yet, the quiet effort he had been putting in, the late nights, the long hours, the careful testing would soon become the comeback no one in the office saw coming. The week passed quietly, but the tension inside the office slowly grew. Everyone felt it, even if no one talked about it openly. The old company's system was getting slower every day. Files took too long to load, numbers didn't update correctly, and sometimes the whole thing froze for minutes at a time. Workers shook their heads, restarted their computers again and again, sighed loudly at their desks. Amir noticed everything, but he didn't comment. He simply kept observing, understanding, and taking mental notes. Every problem the system had was something he had already fixed in the tool he built quietly on his own. Every complaint he heard was something his system could solve instantly. But he wasn't ready to show it yet, not until he knew for sure that it worked perfectly. On Wednesday morning, the tension finally reached a point that no one could ignore. It started with a call from one of the company's oldest clients. The client complained that their order details were wrong. The delivery date was incorrect, and the system kept sending confusing notifications. The employees dealing with the client panicked. They opened files, checked entries, restarted machines, but nothing worked. The system kept showing mismatched numbers. By noon, 3 more clients called with the same issue. The problem was spreading. People rushed around the office, moving between desks, discussing what might be wrong. The sound of footsteps and frustrated voices grew louder by the minute. "This is getting out of hand." Someone said, "We're going to lose clients like this. Why isn't the system working today?" All eyes kept drifting anxiously toward the boss's office door. No one wanted to be the one he blamed next. AMI kept working quietly, but inside he felt a slow build of concern. He clicked through the old system files, trying to see where the issue was coming from. He noticed a pattern. The errors weren't random. They were caused by the old system failing to update entries correctly. Data overlaps, time delays, missing codes. All things he had predicted months ago. His automated checker system could solve all of this in seconds, but he still didn't move. He knew stepping forward too soon could make things worse. People might think he was trying to show off or replace the existing software. Others might not trust something they had never seen before. If the system had even one flaw, the boss would blame him. So he waited, but the problem didn't stop. By afternoon, the office was in a state of complete disarray. People talked over one another, phones kept ringing, and several employees hovered around the same computer, trying to figure out why numbers kept changing on their own. At one point, the boss finally stepped out of his office. His face carried the kind of tension that made everyone straighten up immediately. He wasn't shouting, "Not yet," but his eyes showed he was trying hard to stay calm despite the situation collapsing all around him. "What is going on here?" he asked, scanning the room. No one answered right away. Everyone avoided eye contact. Finally, one of the team leads spoke with a nervous tone. "Sir, the system is not updating orders correctly. Deliveries are being sent to the wrong locations. The data is mixing up." "How?" the boss demanded. "We don't know yet," the lead replied. "It's getting worse every hour." The boss rubbed his forehead and took a deep breath. "Fix it. Immediately. We cannot afford mistakes like this." Everyone went back to their desks, typing faster now, almost frantically. But the system kept failing. Didn't matter how many times they refreshed the page or restarted the program. The errors simply grew. Amir watched silently. His hands hovered over his keyboard, unsure. He wanted to help. Of course he did. But he wasn't sure how the boss would react, not after the way he had been treated earlier that week. Still, he couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in his stomach. He knew the problem wasn't going to stop. It would only get worse unless someone stepped in with something entirely new. Around 3 p.m., a loud sound echoed from the far corner of the office. One of the senior employees, a man known for staying calm in any situation, pushed his chair back in frustration. "This is impossible," the man said. "The system is stuck again. I can't get the new data to load." Another person nearby added, "Same here. The order page won't open." Someone else said, "My file just disappeared." People looked at each other with pale faces. Then came the message that changed everything, sir. An employee called out to the boss, "The system has completely frozen." The entire room went still. The boss rushed to check for himself. He leaned over the nearest computer and frowned at the frozen screen. He clicked a few buttons, but nothing moved. The system was completely locked. The boss straightened up slowly, a look of helplessness crossing his face. something no one had ever seen before. "Restart the entire server," he ordered. Now, the IT team followed his instructions, shutting down and restarting the main server. Everyone waited in tense silence. Some people paced around, others sat stiff in their chairs, staring at their blank screens. After several long minutes, the computers turned back on. But when the system came up again, the screen displayed a message no one expected. Data load failed. Order files not found. System. Error code. 804, a wave of shock rippled across the office. "What does that mean?" someone asked. "Are the files gone?" "No, that can't be possible." The boss looked shaken now. He turned sharply toward the IT staff, demanding answers, but they had none. They kept exchanging confused looks, pressing buttons, typing commands, searching through logs. Then a voice from near the center of the room said softly, "Amir might know what to do." It wasn't loud, but the room heard it. Several heads turned toward him. The boss looked at him as well, though not with anger, more with surprise. Amir felt dozens of eyes on him. He stood slowly. His voice was calm. "I can try," he said, "but I need permission to access the main system." The boss hesitated. He didn't like giving up control. He didn't like relying on someone he had just scolded days earlier. But right now, he didn't have a choice. "Fine," he said, letting out a tight breath. "Do whatever you need to do." Amir walked toward the main server computer. People moved aside to give him space. The atmosphere shifted quietly, like everyone sensed this was not going to be an ordinary moment. He sat down, clicked through the main system logs, and typed commands with a steady rhythm. His eyes scanned the code, searching for the root of the problem. It didn't take long to find it. The system wasn't just slow, it was broken at its core. Too many conflicting updates, too much old data, now too many overlapping codes. It was like a tangled knot that no one had ever bothered to untangle. Amir's heartbeat remained steady. He knew exactly what needed to be done, but it couldn't be fixed manually, not with this broken software. The room fell completely silent as he worked. The only sound was the soft tapping of keys. Someone whispered, "He looks so calm." Another said, "I didn't know he was this good." Amir continued typing for several minutes, then stopped. He turned to the boss. "I can repair this temporarily," he said. "I can get the system working again for the day. But it won't solve the real problem." The boss frowned. "What do you mean?" Amir paused briefly. He wasn't someone who liked dramatic announcements, but he had to be clear. "The system is outdated," he explained. "It's collapsing because it wasn't built to handle the load we have now." "And the real solution?" the boss asked. Amir took a quiet breath. "I've been working on something. A new system, an assistant tool that automatically corrects errors, organizes data, and prevents issues like this." The room reacted instantly. People looked shocked, impressed, curious. "You built a new system?" someone asked. "When?" another whispered. "By yourself?" a third added. Amir nodded. "I started months ago. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to test it fully first." The boss's expression flickered confusion, surprise, disbelief. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Amir looked back at the screen. "I can run part of the tool now and see if it helps. Should be able to restore the lost files." "Do it," the boss said quietly. The command wasn't loud or harsh this time. It carried something different. Trust mixed with desperation. Amir opened his program. The screen changed immediately, displaying a clean interface with organized tabs. People leaned in, eyes wide. It looked modern, smooth, and nothing like the old company system. He initiated the recovery process. A progress bar appeared, scanning database, pairing corrupted entries, recreating missing files, restoring order details. Room held its breath. People watched the percentage rise slowly. 20%, 35%, 50%, 70%. Someone whispered, "Please work." Another whispered, "Come on." Finally, the bar reached 100%. A soft chime sounded, "System restored. All files recovered. Errors repaired." The room exhaled at once. Relief filled the air like fresh oxygen. People looked at Amir the way they would look at someone who had just pulled them out of a crisis. The boss stared at the screen in disbelief. "You fixed it," he said quietly. Amir shook his head gently. The tool fixed it. I only activated it. The boss didn't respond right away. He looked around the room, then back at Amir. His expression carried something unfamiliar, something the office had never seen from him before. Respect. But before anyone could speak again, another alert popped up on the screen. Warning. More errors detected. Main. System unstable. People froze. The old system was still collapsing. The temporary fix didn't solve everything, but Amir didn't panic. He looked at the warning calmly, then said in a steady voice, I can stabilize it, but I need to run the full tool. The boss swallowed hard. Do whatever you need to do. And that was the moment when everyone in the room realized something. This wasn't just a technical issue. This was the beginning of Amir's comeback, the moment no one had seen coming. The next morning arrived more quietly than anyone expected. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light across the city, and the air felt oddly still, almost like the world was trying to calm itself after everything that had happened. In that quiet moment, he woke up before his alarm, staring at the ceiling for a while as his thoughts drifted back to the woman, her situation, and everything he had witnessed the day before. It wasn't something he could just forget. He sat at the edge of the bed for a long moment, letting out a slow breath. A part of him wondered if maybe he had already done enough, but another part told him that walking away now would feel wrong. He wanted to understand the full story. It's not for gossip, not for drama, but because something about the way she stood her ground had stayed with him. She wasn't loud. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't trying to prove anything yet. She carried a quiet strength that made people pause. After getting ready, he made himself a simple breakfast, but halfway through he left it untouched. His mind kept replaying the moment when the judge dismissed her concerns without even giving her space to speak. It had bothered him then, and it bothered him even more now. He had seen people treated unfairly before, but this felt different. It felt personal, even though he barely knew her. He grabbed his keys and headed out, unsure of what exactly he was planning to do, but feeling a strong pull to be somewhere near the court again. Maybe he hoped she would come back. Maybe he simply wanted to see if things remained as tense as they were yesterday. He didn't know, but he went anyway. When he reached the courthouse, the atmosphere outside was completely different. There were no raised voices, no arguments, no tension in the air, just regular people going about their day, walking up the stairs, talking quietly to one another. It almost surprised him how normal everything looked. As he stood near the steps, he noticed someone familiar approaching. It was her. She walked slowly, not with fear or hesitation, but with a calm confidence that made him straighten up without even realizing it. She was holding a small folder in her hand, and her eyes looked more focused than they had the day before. For a moment, he didn't know if he should call out to her or let her pass without interruption. But then she noticed him, and the faintest, softest smile touched her expression. "You're here again?" she asked gently. He nodded. "I guess I wanted to see how things were going today." "I wasn't sure if you'd be coming back." "Had to," she replied simply. "Yesterday didn't feel right. I knew I needed to try again, not for anyone else, but for myself." Her voice carried no bitterness, no anger, just quiet determination. He admired that about her. Many people would have walked away after being treated unfairly, but she didn't. She didn't shout. She didn't create a scene. She didn't complain. She just came back ready to do things properly. "Do you mind if I walk with you for a bit?" he asked. She looked at him, a little surprised by the question, but she nodded. "Sure." They walked side by side toward the entrance, and for a moment, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It almost felt grounding. The building looked bigger and colder than usual. "But she didn't seem intimidated by it," he finally asked. "Do you feel ready for whatever happens today?" She took a breath. "I think so. I've faced harder things in life than this, but it still helps to know that someone believes I deserve to be heard." He felt something tighten in his chest at that statement. She wasn't asking for help, wasn't asking for pity. She just appreciated being treated like a human being. Inside, the halls were busier, but she walked calmly toward the same room where the tension unfolded yesterday. When they reached the doorway, she turned to him. "I think I should go in alone," she said gently. "But I'm grateful you're here." He nodded. "I'll wait right outside." She gave a small, thankful nod and stepped inside. The door closed behind her. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, trying not to imagine the worst. He hoped the judge would listen today. He hoped the people in the room would show more respect. And above all, he hoped she wouldn't leave feeling defeated. Time passed slowly. A few minutes felt like half an hour. He watched people enter and leave other rooms, but no one came out of hers. He tried to distract himself, but his mind kept circling back to her calm expression as she walked inside. Finally, after what felt like forever, the door opened. She stepped out, looking thoughtful, almost relieved. Not happy, not triumphant, but steady. He straightened immediately. "How did it go?" She paused for a moment, then let out a soft breath. "It went better than yesterday. The judge actually listened this time. I explained everything I needed to explain. I don't know what the final decision will be, but at least I was able to speak. That matters." He felt the tension in his shoulders ease. "I'm glad. Really glad." They walked outside together, and for the first time since he had met her, she seemed lighter. Not carefree, but no longer weighed down by yesterday's unfairness. When they reached the steps, she stopped and looked at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Most people don't stay when things get complicated. But you did. You didn't have to, but you did." "I stayed because it felt right," he replied. "And you didn't deserve what happened yesterday." Her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. They stood there for a moment longer until she said, "I should head home now. It's been a long morning already. Do you need a ride?" He offered without thinking. She gave a gentle smile. "That's kind of you, but I'll be okay. I just need some quiet time." He understood. She wasn't shutting him out. She just needed space to breathe. "Take care then," he said. "You too." He watched as she walked away down the sidewalk, her steps calm and steady. Something about her presence left an impression that lingered even after she disappeared around the corner. He didn't know if their paths would cross again, or if today was the end of their brief connection. But something told him this wasn't the end. Not yet. As he turned to leave, he felt a strange sense of purpose settle in his chest. Not the kind that tells you to rush into someone's life uninvited, but the kind that says you did the right thing. The kind that reminds you that sometimes, simply standing by someone even quietly can make a bigger difference than you realize. He walked toward his car, replaying the day's events, and for the first time in a while, he felt something shift within him. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was understanding. Or maybe it was the realization that strength doesn't always come from loud gestures or big statements. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground with calm dignity. It's just like she did. And although the day had ended, the story between them didn't feel finished yet. It felt like another chapter was waiting, just around the corner. Ready to unfold when the time was right, the next morning at the office felt strangely heavy. Almost like the building itself knew something big was about to happen. People walked in quietly, still thinking about the night before when everything had almost collapsed. The pressure on the team was high, but the pressure on Amir was even higher. He had worked for so many hours fixing the system, guiding others, giving directions, and solving problems that usually took whole departments to handle. Yet he still walked in with the same calm expression, the same light step, the same quiet presence. He didn't look tired, even though everyone knew he barely slept. Instead, he looked steady, like he had made peace with whatever was coming next. Some people nodded to him as he passed by their desks. Others gave him encouraging smiles. A few even whispered his name in admiration, though he didn't stop to listen. He was never the type to celebrate early. He preferred to wait for clarity. But today wasn't going to be an ordinary day. The moment he reached his desk, someone rushed up to him. It was one of the junior staff members, almost out of breath. She told him that the director had arrived, earlier than expected, and had called for an urgent gathering in the main conference hall. Amir felt the shift in the air. This wasn't just about reviewing last night's numbers or checking if the system had stabilized. This was something bigger. As he walked toward the conference hall, he noticed the boss standing outside the doorway. The boss looked different today, less confident, far more tense. His eyes avoided everyone else, and he kept fiddling with the file in his hands. When he saw Amir approaching, he stiffened. For a brief second, he opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Maybe an apology, maybe an explanation. But no words came out. Amir simply nodded and walked past him. Inside, the hall was almost full. People sat in neat rows, whispering quietly. The director stood at the front, tall and serious, his hands clasped behind his back. The room fell silent when Amir entered, and for a moment he wondered if he had walked into the wrong place. But then the director smiled, not the usual formal smile, but a genuine one. "Come in, Amir," the director said, his voice warm but firm. "We've been waiting for you." Amir took a seat near the front. The director cleared his throat and began addressing the entire room. He explained the chaos that had unfolded the previous evening, the system failure, client complaints, the near disaster that had threatened the whole company. But more importantly, he explained how the crisis had been handled. He talked about leadership, about responsibility, about clear thinking under pressure. Then, carefully and with emphasis, he mentioned the person who guided the team, rebuilt the failing systems, and helped restore everything before sunrise. He said Amir's name. The entire room started clapping. It wasn't polite clapping or forced appreciation. It was the kind of applause that came from people who had seen something undeniable. Even people who barely knew Amir joined in. The sound filled the hall, echoing off the walls. Amir sat still for a moment, almost overwhelmed. Though he didn't show it externally, the director raised his hand, signaling the room to quiet down. Then, he went on to explain something no one expected. The company had been planning to introduce a new operational systema, major upgrade that had been delayed for months because the proposed solutions were too expensive and too complex. But the tool Amir created had not only solved the crisis, it had exceeded the design goals of the planned project. The director turned toward Amir and asked him to stand. Amir did, unsure of what was coming next. "In all my years here," the director said, "I have rarely seen such dedication, such calm under pressure, and such remarkable innovation. You took a situation that could have destroyed us and turned it around, and you did it quietly, without seeking attention, without asking for credit. That is real leadership." The room was silent again. "As of today," the director continued, "I am officially appointing Amir as the new operations lead. He will oversee the entire modernization process, and his system will be implemented across all departments." A soft gasp moved through the crowd. Some people looked thrilled. Some looked stunned. A few stared at the boss. Ami stood frozen. A promotion. And not just any promotion, one that put him above the very person who had humiliated him. The director turned toward the boss next. "I also reviewed the meeting recordings from yesterday morning," he said calmly, "and I am disappointed by the way certain matters were handled. This company does not believe in belittling workers, especially not in public. We value respect, professionalism, and fairness." The boss swallowed hard, his face turning pale. "This company will not tolerate behavior that discourages or humiliates employees," the director added. "We expect better." And it wasn't an aggressive statement, it wasn't shouting. But it was enough. Everyone understood exactly what had happened. The boss lowered his head. For the first time, he looked genuinely ashamed. Meanwhile, Amir still stood silently at the front, unsure of what to say. He had never wanted revenge. He had never worked with the intention of proving someone wrong. He had only wanted to do his job well and contribute something meaningful. The director finally turned back to him with a gentle smile. "Would you like to say a few words?" he asked. Amir hesitated. He wasn't used to speaking in front of large groups, but he also knew that this moment wasn't just about him. People were watching. They were expecting something genuine, something real. So he stepped forward. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He said he was thankful for the opportunity, thankful for the team that supported him, and thankful for the chance to help the company grow. He didn't mention the boss or the humiliation, didn't bring up last night's stress or the long hours. Instead, he said something simple. "When we work together with respect, we can handle anything. That's all that matters." The room remained silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. Soon the entire hall was cheering again. Not for drama, not for conflict, but for the calm, humble man standing in front of them. After the gathering ended, many people approached him, some to congratulate him, some to apologize for not standing up for him earlier, others simply wanting to shake his hand. The boss walked toward him slowly, almost nervously. For a moment it looked like he might turn away, but he danned single quotes. He stopped in front of a mirror and spoke quietly. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was wrong." Amir looked at him. There was no anger in his eyes, only calm understanding. "It's okay," he replied. "Hey, let's just focus on doing better from now on." The boss nodded, almost relieved. Later, when Amir finally left the hall and stepped outside into the fresh air, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of clarity. Not pride, not victory, but quiet confidence. He had faced disrespect, humiliation, and doubt, yet he never fought back with anger. He fought back with patience, effort, integrity, and that made all the difference. He walked toward his desk again, ready to start a new chapter. People greeted him with genuine warmth. The tension that once surrounded him was gone. The whispers were different, now filled with admiration instead of judgment. His story wasn't about revenge. It was about staying true to who he was, and that was the comeback no one had seen coming.